Up and running here. Beef up front. All things college football. Of course, beef is Ryan Coyle. I am Sean Brace. This is, once again, your one stop shop for all the news and information you need in the world of college football. Now, with only 2 regular season games left, man, a lot to play for, a lot up for grabs, including a Heisman Trophy award and a couple college playoff spots, Final Four spots. So we're going to break it all down. Of course, Ryan Coyle with me here. And Ryan, good evening, sir. A lot to get to as far as the world of college football. But bottom line, last week, a couple winners, a couple easy ones. I not a lot of surprise happening last week with Franklin and, of course, Alabama rolling.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty crazy. We were just saying earlier how we're right here with only 2 regular season games left for most teams. I mean USC actually wraps up their regular season this week, and they have a chance to go 7-5. And I know coming into the year, a lot of people peg them as kind of their national title team. So this has been a pretty wild season, but a lot of these top dogs are still sitting there at the top undefeated. But these next few weeks, as we've kind of been alluding to, everything's going to slowly figure itself out. Teams are starting to get knocked out more and more, and it's starting to dwindle down. But the real chaos is really coming up in these next few weeks that'll decide the playoff.
So you're still believing that, yeah, it's going to work itself out. Of course, Michigan, Ohio State, they're going to eliminate one team's going. Of course, with the SEC championship game, Alabama and Georgia. If Georgia wins that eliminates Alabama, makes life real easy for the other teams that possibly could end up with one loss. But if Georgia doesn't win, if Alabama wins, like there could be straight anarchy with that one victory because, of course, it's Alabama. But so you're still under the impression right here on November the 15th that college football, no matter the rankings last night, bottom line is in 2 to 3 weeks, all our answers will be there.
Yeah, I think so, and it's especially prevalent in college football and basketball when your resume matters. Teams get penalized more for losing later in the season. Like
Yep.
if Alabama's first loss were to come to Georgia in the SEC title, or like what I mean by that, if that was their first loss, that would just be the gut punch for them, the elimination. Like the fact that Alabama lost earlier in the year to Texas, that was actually kind of a reward for them, just because that's kind of in the past. And I think like with Oregon and Washington too. Washington already beat Oregon, but if Oregon beats them later in the season in the Pac-12 championship game, they'll most likely get in over them. So I think everything will kind of take itself into account. But there's a lot of things that have to happen for all these hypothetical scenarios to wind up.
Want to pin you down right from the start here. Florida State versus Washington right here, right now. Who's got the more impressive resume?
I think you'd still have to say Washington because I think they have the best win with that Oregon win.
Ooh.
As I was saying, Florida State, they're kind of a victim of their own success because you look at their September, they knock off Clemson and LSU, 2 teams that were expected to compete for the playoff spot themselves. But now you look, Clemson's a 4-loss team, LSU's a 3-loss team. So those wins don't really look as good as they did before.
Well, why not bump them up then? If the college football committee looks at it the same way that they should as we are, the Pac-12 deserves a hell of a lot more credit this year. We're quick to kick them when they were down over the past few years, and rightfully so. But this year they've been delivering, and they got some really good high-powered offenses, some teams that I think could shake things up. I'm not going to go as far as just beat Georgia. Last time I did that, TCU ended up losing 65-7. But what I am trying to say is that right here, right now, Pac-12 more impressive to me than the ACC. So why are they still in front of Washington, in your opinion?
It's I think the beauty in the eye of the beholder in those circumstances. I feel like you just have to be in that room to really have a dead set opinion on it. Washington's also had a few stinkers, a few games where they've been kind of playing with their food a little bit too much. And some of these wins, they might look good on paper, but like the USC win at the end of the day, USC might be a 5-loss team. And Florida State still undefeated. And I think eye test wise, I think they're right up there talent wise with some of those top teams as well.
All right, let's get into the card because we got a lot to discuss, and we're going to wrap up with some Heisman Trophy conversation as well. I want to open it up right from the gate with the team we were just discussing. 7:30 kickoff. Once again, DraftKings Sportsbook is where we're getting all of our numbers from here. All things college football, beef up front. Be sure to use Brace as the promo code, and at 7:30 p.m. Interesting spread here. might be trying to tell you a thing or two, but I'm not buying what they're selling. Oregon State 2.5-point favorites right now over Washington. Of course, Washington with the better record, undefeated, 10-0. Oregon State, Corvallis, really difficult, especially at night, I understand. But 8-2 here, 6-4 ATS for Oregon State this season. And like I said, right now they are 2.5-point favorites over Washington. Why is that in your mind? What are the odds makers thinking? And what are you saying, Ryan Quill?
Yeah, I mean the home field is obviously the big thing in this one. The fact that Oregon State has this opportunity, and it's another one of those games where Oregon State has the chance to kind of, piss on Washington on their way out the door. I mean, leaving Oregon State and Washington State as the only two teams left. I mean, Oregon State has that chance to kind of kick them while they're down and be like, we should have been the team considered, not you. It's also a clash of styles in this one. Oregon State's built more like that Big Ten squad. They want to maul you in the run game, shorten the possessions, keep Washington off the field, all that kind of old school talk. But at the end of the day, you have to find a way to stop this Washington team, and no one has really done it all year. I know I said they've had a couple stinkers, but this is still a team when in the big games they've shown up. I mean, they still lead the country in passing yards per game with 378. And if they can get up early, I think that's the key. If they're able to get up early and make Oregon State kind of play from behind and throw the football around the yard, that's where Washington's going to have their success, because this Oregon State team's not built to do that. If Oregon State is able to get out, control the league, get up to like a 10-0 start, really just milk the clock and force Washington to kind of be perfect by throwing from behind, then that's going to play into their hands. But I just think at the end of the day, Washington's a better football team. They've won all these games for a reason. And I just think it's hard to emulate their style of play in practice. 3 NFL receivers, you're not used to seeing that if you're Oregon State every day in practice. So I like Washington to go and win this game outright. At the end of the day, it's the same thing why I'm taking the Eagles over the Chiefs. I just think they're the better football team.
It's hard to argue. It's just something there with that line, and then money coming in on Oregon State, man. Just the fact that they're going to bump that up to 2.5. Hey, if you want to continue pushing that number, you want to make it 3.5, I'll take it all day. Call me a sucker, but I've been all about Washington. Now, last week, luckily, did not touch them on the spread. Was definitely disappointed, giving up 28 to Utah in the first half, but they ended up scoring 30 plus, which was their team total. So we cashed on that one. Another victory there. They are just dominant, man. I think they're averaging like 41 points per game. It's just fun to watch, and I'm a big Penix fan. We'll come back to that Penix conversation a little bit later. This one's 63.5 is your total in this one, and from the team prop perspective, Washington floating around the 29-30. Well, actually a little higher. 31.5 is plus 105. Again, to me, if it's anything under 32.5, I'll probably take it. But 31.5 at plus 105, I'm in on that as well. I'm buying all things Washington. I think they get undefeated, and I like them in that Big 12, Pac-12, a championship game against Oregon. Curious, any lean in that for you?
I actually like Oregon, and the books really like them too. I'm pretty sure I saw the other day they're actually minus 190 to win the Pac-12 right now. I just think the thing with Oregon, that why I really like them in that initial matchup, is just the balance that they present, because they can beat you if they want to play in a shootout, or like Oregon State's going to try and beat you up at the line of scrimmage. Oregon can do either of those. It's just they kind of got a little too cute, I think, on the road, a little too aggressive at times in that Washington game. They missed a kick. They just had basically every close thing that could have went wrong. It went wrong for them, and they still only lost that game by 3. So I think neutral site, they're just the better overall football team.
All right, let's keep it moving. 8 p.m. We'll stay in the nightcap. We got Texas and Iowa State. Big time game right here for Texas. They're 7.5-point road favorites. 47 is your total late in the season. This has got to be a possible letdown spot, correct, for Texas?
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get remembered, I think, in this industry by playing it safe. I'm actually going to take Iowa State to win this game and really collapse Texas, the whole Texas is back narrative. They've been playing with their food too much, and I think we've been leading up to this the past few weeks. One of these top dogs is going to get knocked off. Like we've been saying, it's all going to play itself out. This would certainly be probably the biggest domino in playing itself out, because in the Big 12 is eliminated entirely. I mean, Texas last week, a 3-point win over TCU after giving up 21 points in the fourth quarter. They tried to blow that game. The roller coaster of the ride, that was the Kansas State game, where if Kansas State's kicker made an extra point, Kansas State would have won that game as well. The loss to the Oklahoma team earlier in the year that isn't really looking that legit as the season has gone on. And this is another chance for, as I said, with Oregon State to do to Washington, this is a chance for Iowa State to really kind of piss on their grave, Texas, as they head out the door to the SEC. And I think Iowa State also has kind of the formula to pull off the upset because they're that old school team as well, where they're just going to want to make this game ugly, not let Texas get in any type of rhythm. This is going to be the Super Bowl in Iowa State for a team that really at the beginning of the year looked in shambles with all the players, with the gambling accusations, Matt Campbell potentially on the hot seat. They've had a few down years in a row. This has been a really nice year for Iowa State, kind of coming back after a few down seasons, and this would really be a great way to top it off. I think the spread is certainly a good play in this one, and this is one I'm looking at to like live bet as well. Like if Texas finds a way to get up early, 10-0, 14-0, look to play that back for Iowa State. Try to get them on the live number throughout the game, because if we've seen anything from Texas, it is that they kind of take their foot off the gas when they get these leads, and they let these other teams come back into it. So I think that's certainly a good gambling angle for this game as well.
Not to get into anything from the Texas A&M standpoint, but as far as Big 12 conversation is concerned, surprised that Jimbo Fisher got let go last week?
I mean, when the number 76 million gets thrown around, I think you should be a little bit surprised at everything. But the interim coach was actually saying that he was kind of surprised himself in the locker room because it was a big win. They had I think it was Mississippi State. They crushed them. Mississippi State wound up firing their coach right after that. But then everyone was in the locker room, high five and good emotions, and it seemed like, all right, maybe we're turning a corner here or something, and then just see it all go. Like I said, 76 million, you got to be a little bit surprised at that, but with all the money that they have, money is really no objective for Texas A&M, which I might argue is the worst job in the country just due to the expectations.
Yeah, they're completely delusional down there. I don't remember them ever really competing for anything, to be honest with you. I know they had some good years with Manziel, but other than that, not really.
Still went like 9-3, I think, with Johnny Manziel when he won the Heisman.
Yeah. And again, I just, right? Am I missing anything in the last 2 decades? Have they ever been really in the conversation for a national championship? No.
They're the Penn State of the South, pretty much.
Ooh, ouch. Ooh. Yeah, Penn State, they got a lot in common with the Dallas Cowboys, too. A lot of, reminiscing about the 90s and haven't done a damn thing since. Now, I know that they've had some good seasons mixed in, but, that's a second-tier team compared to the teams that you consider top dogs that can win it all year in, year out. Penn State just is not on that level. Texas A&M clearly in agreement with you on that one. All right, let's talk about some teams that can win it all. Let's go to the number 1 team in the country, Georgia, hosting Tennessee. Good old Rocky Top, 10.5 point spread on DraftKings Sportsbook. 59.5 is your total on this one. 3:30 p.m. Any chance that Tennessee makes this a good ball game here on Saturday afternoon?
I'm saying no. I mean, Georgia, I think, shown us that no team in college football gets up for a big game, a big opponent like them. I mean, the Kentucky game, they dominated. Florida dominated. Ole Miss absolutely dominated last week, and they got down 7-0. After that, the first game script plays by Lane Kiffin, Georgia's absolutely just destroyed them from that. I mean, they can just seemingly turn it on whenever they want. And I think that game against Bama in the SEC title game is going to be the college football game of the year. I mean, both these teams are playing their best ball. And this is a Georgia team that we haven't seen the last 2 years that won the national title. Those teams were built on defense. This team is number 5 in the country in total yards on offense. Carson Beck has played really well at quarterback. Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey both in the lineup now. This is a team that can really throw the football around the yard, and they can go out there and win a shootout. I think that was a concern the past few years where we saw Ohio State almost pick them off last year in that high-scoring affair where are they really built to go out there? I think this year that team is, and Kendall Milton is still a really good running back, and they can spread the ball around in the passing game. So a balanced offense, but a team that can go out there and put up points, certainly a different identity than the Georgia we've seen. I really like them in this spot. I think Tennessee as a program has taken a step back this year after a really step up this year. Every big game they seemingly haven't shown up. So I do like Georgia this week minus the 10.5, and I did get the over of 59.5 as well.
All right, let's keep it moving. Let's talk about 2 teams to the Big Ten. Get your thoughts on Michigan and Ohio State. We'll start with Michigan. They're a noon kick. Michigan taking on Maryland on the road. They're 19-point favorites, 50.5. Will it be a ball game within the 19? Should we roll with the Terps to make life difficult on Michigan? Enough of the I'm the victim, the victimhood, and just to score some points. And like I said, make it an interesting ball game, whether that is keeping it within the number or 2 touchdowns. I don't give a damn, but just inside that 19 to 18 point range.
Yeah, so when you look at both Michigan and Ohio State, I mean, obviously it is the biggest look ahead spot of the season, as most likely both of those teams will be undefeated heading into the Michigan Ohio State game Thanksgiving weekend. So I think that's something you can look at. Maryland with the 19, and then it's Minnesota is 27.5. I think those are both spots you certainly could look at. I'm not betting either of them. Just it's these spots are too funky, especially so with whatever's going on at Michigan, and so that's a lot of points to cover on the road. I would probably lean towards more taking the Minnesota plus the 27.5 because they're another team that if they want to can kind of slow it up a little bit. But Ohio State's passing game has looked pretty good over the past few weeks. Kyle McCord, I think, is playing his best, most comfortable football. Marvin Harrison's still out there. So both these games are kind of stayaways for me, more so a just kind of look and evaluate both as they head into that final game against each other because I don't think either team is really going to show a whole lot this week.
All right, beef up front, Ryan Coyle, Sean Brace, and you did hit on that 27.5. It's a 50 total here. That's a 4 p.m. kick between Minnesota and Ohio State. The other game at 4 o'clock that has my interest in a big way is Oregon. They're 23.5 point road favorites on the road at Arizona State. 54.5 is your total. Again, any type of ball game happening there in Arizona State?
I don't think so. I do have on my card Oregon minus the 23.5 this week. They're in a spot where Ohio State and Michigan, it doesn't matter for either of those. They could both win by 3 points this week. It doesn't matter. The winner of that next game going to the Big Ten title game and will go to the college football playoff no matter what. Oregon is kind of in the spot where they might need some like style points. Like if they need a last second touchdown drive, a last second field goal to knock off Arizona State, I think that could get used against them down the line, even if they wind up beating Washington. All these teams with one loss, they don't have any time to play around with their food. They need to win. They need to win big, do everything that they can to possibly enhance that resume because if it gets to the spot where there's like 4 one-loss teams that deserve to get in. You have an undefeated Ohio State. You have undefeated Ohio State or Michigan. You have the undefeated Florida State. If there's a bunch of teams sitting there with one loss, there's going to be room for debate. So you want to win these games as big as possible. So I think Oregon puts their foot on the gas and keeps it there. And I really like them to win this game probably by 30 or more.
All right. Finally, the one that I want to know about, and then we'll get the rest of your card. Florida, Missouri. This game's going off at 7:30 p.m. DraftKings showing Florida catching 11.5. Now, Missouri's been impressive, especially the last 2 weeks. They only have 2 losses on the season, I believe. Last 2 weeks, the boat race Tennessee last week. And then the previous week to that was Georgia, where they came up just short, but made it a ball game and, of course, covered the number where they were catching 14, 31 to 20. Easier said than done on the road in between the hedges at Georgia. So for this one, 11.5, I just feel like there's a little too much respect given to Missouri. I like Florida a lot, actually, in this one, catching the 11.5 points. Graham Merritt's been steady. I don't really think that this is a team that will go and win this game, but you want to give me double-digit points, I'll take the Gators here. Where are you at in this one, Beef?
So my play on this one, I got the over of 59. I think these are two teams that are able to put up points. I think we see some scoring. Florida, though, a lot of pressure on them in this game. I mean, I don't think that this is a spot that they're going to win outright, but I believe coming into this season, their over-under win total was 5.5. They were sitting at 5-2 heading into that Georgia game. They've now lost 3 in a row. You have the number 9 team in Missouri, and then you play Florida State the next week. So they might be 5-7, and you might be seeing a change in Florida's coach and Billy Napier out the door as well, just based off of what they kind of have shown down the stretch. So this is a huge game for Florida, even with, not really much to play for. This is a man that I think is still kind of coaching for his job. But Missouri, I think you could put them up there as the surprise of the college football season, how well they've played. This is a team that is most likely going to win double-digit games, a 10-2 Missouri team with a coach coming into the year on the hot seat. This is the kind of year that Billy Napier is going to have at Florida next year. But I do think these are just two teams that are going to get up and down the field a little bit, score some points. But I'm not going to touch the number in this one.
All right. Let's get your final thoughts on the card. What else are you looking at this week?
All right. Well, we're going back to the well with another Iowa under. Hit it again
Ooh,
last week versus Rutgers. This week it comes in at under 30.5 is what I got it at. I think that number has hit now 4 straight weeks, 30 or less. So going to keep it rolling there. I also have Miami +1. They're hosting Louisville this week. That's a weird kind of spread to me. Uh, Miami had a really nice performance last week against Florida State. They were right in it till the end. And then Louisville really struggled to put away Virginia last week. So I think there's a spot Miami could potentially pick them off. And then I had a couple more. I like Kansas State over 56.5 against Kansas. Kansas quarterback Jason Bean got knocked out last week with an injury, but he was practicing today. Kansas has really played well on offense this year. That was their worst performance last week against Texas Tech. So I think they get back on, and Kansas State has gone over the total in their last 4 games. And then one more play. I'm going to go with Ole Miss -37. I believe they're playing Louisiana Monroe this week. This is just one of those spots where Ole Miss is just going to go and lay the beat down on them just to get that taste out of their mouth from that Georgia game, and one of those games where Ole Miss might win it like 59-10 or something. Looks good for them, but at the end of the day, as Joe Tanzi was saying last week, they're just like Penn State. They're going to beat the piss out of these bad teams, and against these really good teams, that's where they're going to struggle.
a lot of pissing on today's beef up front. A lot of piss and a lot of playing with our food today. I like it though. I like it. All right, Ryan, let's keep it moving from the card. Let's discuss one more here, and I want to get into the Heisman Trophy and wonder where you stand right now. If you had to give it out with 2 to 3 games left for most teams on their schedule, where would you go right here, right now? And where do you see this ending up at the end after the award is given out in New York City?
So I think the most deserving player, if you're just going to do the best player in college football, is Jaden Daniels right now at +320. He's just been so dynamic at everything he's done this year, and has just been uh, kind of slighted, I guess, by the poor defense that LSU has. And I don't understand why this is being called like a team award, because Caleb Williams went 9-3 last year and he still won the trophy. So I don't think that record should be held against Jaden Daniels. And it's not like he hasn't played well in the games that he's lost. But I think it's actually, at the end of the day, I think it's going to wind up going to Michael Penix, because what he does for Washington, especially if they do find a way to run the table, he is what makes them go. When you look at Oregon, as my thing with them all year, they're such a good balanced team where if Bo Nix doesn't go out there and throw for 300 yards, they can still win a game by 2 touchdowns because of that running game that they have. Washington, they need Michael Penix to go out there and play perfect each and every week to win those games, because that's what that offense is built around, him slinging the ball around the yard. They don't really run the football well. So I think that's who is going to wind up winning it. I think he is actually the most valuable if we're going to take into account the overall team record as well. And if you can get a dart on him right now at +380, I think it's kind of worth it. I got Bo Nix at +600 before that Washington Oregon game, so I'm kind of rooting for him to prevail and win the trophy. But I think Michael Penix is going to sway some of the voters by the end if they are able to run that table.
Yeah, I put out a video today from yesterday's show where I said it's either going to go to one of the juniors, Penix Jr. or Marvin Harrison Jr. I think if Ohio State runs the table, beats Michigan, they're not doing it without a healthy dose of Marvin Harrison Jr. in that game. And no matter what, he's going to have him. I like him to really make it difficult. But Penix has had that Heisman Trophy moment, in my opinion. I know he had 2 throws against USC. I think he had a throw against Utah. Like, he's had a couple wow highlights, right? And Jaden Daniels has got great numbers. Nobody is here to argue against him, but he's not blowing Penix completely out of the water with the stats. He's in the ballpark. And oh, by the way, one team's undefeated. One team has 3 losses. So that's why I give the nod right now to Penix. I know it's not a team award. I get it, but it's just the way the voters are going to look at it. So for me, +380 on Penix or +475 for Marvin Harrison Jr., absolutely. I will say this, though. I do believe that if they do lose to Oregon in that Pac-12 championship game, could very well be the difference. So
Yeah, you also have this week Michael Penix playing at Oregon State. Like, he could go out there, if they lay a clunker, he doesn't play well, they lose, he's completely out of it, I think then. And then you fast forward to next week, I mean, we talked about with Bo Nix with Oregon playing Arizona this week. Should be a good win. Should be a good way to pad the stats. But then next week he has Oregon State, which is in the same spot. Your biggest rival in your conference, Oregon and Oregon State. Oregon's leaving the conference. We got one more chance to kind of knock them out before that rivalry's gone. Can we do it? Oregon State's going to be playing more motivated than ever. So Oregon State has really the potential to ruin both of those guys' Heisman cases last week. And you said if Marvin Harrison goes out there and explodes these next 2 weeks, he could find himself winning the trophy as well. It's just so uncommon for a wide receiver to win. I mean, before Devontae Smith, I forget the last receiver to win the award.
No, your facts, and Devontae hasn't, or Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't have the numbers that Devontae put up either. But I just think it's going to be such a focal point. I do think this award is wide open. Like,
yeah,
you're hearing a lot of people make the case for Jaden Daniels. Cool. I just don't see him winning it. Like I said, like his numbers are crazy. They're better than Burrow's. He scored 3 touchdowns and how many straight games? I get it, but you know,
I mean, you look at just this
look at Bo
award.
Nix's number. Bo Nix's numbers are ridiculous.
Yeah, I think though, if you look at just the past few weeks, I don't remember it really flip-flopping this much in recent years. I mean,
Yeah.
Dylan Gabriel and JJ McCarthy 2 weeks ago were tied for
You're
second
right.
overall. I think McCarthy was actually the favorite.
Man, McCarthy was favored for a week.
Yes, and McCarthy and Gabriel were right up there, like right before McCarthy became the favorite. It feels like last year was pretty much Caleb Williams' award to lose from the second half of the season on.
All right. Last question for me. Speaking of Michigan and Ohio State, will Michigan be able to run the football like they did against Penn State? Will they be able to do that against Ohio State, in your opinion?
So the weird thing with that is, if you remember the first 3 possessions of that game, Penn State was shutting them down. I mean, I remember the graphic being up on the screen. I think they had like -3 rushing yards on their first 9 carries or something. And then they found a way to get to the outside. So
well, they got their signals.
Yeah, they must have got something right there.
Waka.
But they found a way to get to the outside on Penn State and burst a few runs there. But Penn State coming into the year was coming into this game was amazing on the ground, and Ohio State's been as well. So I think Ohio State's really going to evaluate Michigan, see what they kind of exploited, what that adjustment they made against Penn State was, and find a way to stop that. But I don't think that they're going to get pushed around that much. But they have the past few years. But this is a different Ohio State defense identity-wise than we've seen the past few seasons.
Well, only a few games left, and we got a lot to discuss over these next couple of weeks, a lot to figure out. And, of course, we got bowl season fast approaching. We got to come up with our competition in-house. We got a belt that we compete for. I believe. I forget who has the belt. That's a bad job by me. Who's got the belt from last year? Oh, my goodness. It's the first time I thought about it. TKO, Tim O'Keefe had it. Aton had it to start. There's a bowl championship belt out there on the line. All right, so we got that coming up here, and of course, we're going to be doing a lot more with bowl season, and looking forward to it, of course, with Ryan Coyle, Mr. Beef up front himself. Ryan, favorite play this week, go.
Favorite play this week, I will go. Put me on the spot. Give me Georgia -10.5. I think Tennessee's dead, and I think Georgia just finds a way to end their season in their own house.
All right. Final thoughts. Anything on your chest you'd like to get off at this point in time, Ryan Coyle?
I don't really remember the past few seasons. I guess the amount of openness still as we're this late in the season. Like, it feels like the past few years there was only 4 or 5 teams really in consideration. I think that there's still 7 or 8 potentially that could find their way into the dance. So it's going to be an exciting Final Four, and I'm really hoping that there's one of those letdowns this week to really add kind of another wrinkle into everything.
Be a lot of fun. It would be a lot of fun to see a team slip up right here, right now. We got 2 weeks. Hopefully we can get some of that. I want to see some anarchy, baby. All right, for Beef Up Front, I am Sean Brace. He is Ryan Coyle. Be sure to check us out, all things on socials at Ryan Coyle 35. And as always, every podcast over at foxphlgambler.com. Good luck on all your plays. We'll talk to you next week.